You're 20 years old, middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, 1944. You work the harvest with your father 3 months a year, and the rest of the time, you're either at school or at the picture house on Elm, or making loose plans about what comes after. Not complicated plans, not grand ones, just the ordinary kind. A piece of land, maybe? A dog? A girl named Ruth who works the counter at the pharmacy and smiles at you in a way that means something. Then Pearl Harbor happens. You know what it means before the radio finishes saying it. Everyone does. You've watched it happen to the older boys on your block already. Your father sits at the kitchen table for a long time after the broadcast ends. He doesn't say anything. He just sits there with his hands flat on the table, looking at them, like he's memorizing something. There's a part of you, and you'll never say this to anyone, that feels something close to readiness. You don't know enough yet to understand what you're volunteering for. Ruth holds your face in her hands at the bus station. She doesn't cry. She just looks at you very carefully, like she's trying to fix the details. The street shrinks behind the bus window. That's the part that stays. How small everything looks when you might not see it again. Basic training makes you hard in certain ways and leaves you soft in others, and you won't know which is which until it matters. You ship out to England first, then Italy, then France. The 45th Infantry Division, the Thunderbirds. By the time Germany opens up in front of you, you've been in it long enough to have stopped thinking of yourself as someone from Oklahoma. You're just a man who moves forward when the order comes, and gets flat when the shooting starts, and does the math on distances and cover without having to think about it anymore. You've seen friends die. You've seen things that rewired something permanent inside you. You thought that was the worst of it. You were wrong. April 29th, 1945. A Sunday. The sky is gray and low, the way German skies always seem to be in your memory. The air has a cold edge to it, even though spring is supposed to have arrived. You're moving toward a large complex outside Munich with the rest of the 45th. The intel says supply depot, maybe a factory, something logistical, something to secure. Nobody is particularly afraid. The war is almost over. Everyone can feel it, the way you feel a storm coming before the clouds arrive. Hitler is finished. The Germans know it. You know it. It's just a matter of what the last few miles cost. You move along a railroad track that runs toward the complex. There's a train sitting on the rails, motionless. 40 or so cattle cars, completely still in the gray morning light. Something is wrong. You feel it before you understand it. A smell reaches you first. Something thick and biological and wrong in a way you have no category for. Not the sulfur smell of battle, not the mud and exhaust of the road, something else entirely. Something underneath everything else that makes your body want to step backward before your brain gives the order. A lieutenant moves to the nearest car. He grabs the latch. He slides the door. He screams. Inside the car, there are bodies. Not a few, not a dozen. Stacked and layered and compressed. Men and women and children, or what used to be men and women and children, starved down to something that barely holds its shape. Eyes open, mouths open, piled on each other the way you'd pile lumber, the way you'd stack anything that isn't people. 39 cars, thousands of them, left on the tracks to die of thirst and exposure while the Germans retreated. Some of the bodies have marks on them from the living trying to eat the dead. The living didn't make it either. You have seen men die in battle. You have seen what artillery does to a human body. You have seen things in the last 3 years that you have carefully put somewhere behind your eyes where they live without language. None of it prepared you for this. A kid from your unit, 19 years old, tough in the ordinary soldier way, sits down in the snow beside the tracks and starts crying. Not quietly. Full, heaving, unguarded sobs. His rifle across his knees and his face in his hands. Nobody tells him to stop. Nobody looks at him sideways. One of the sergeants puts a hand on the kid's back for a moment, then takes it away, because there's nothing to say and everyone knows it. The sadness lasts about 60 seconds. Then something else moves in behind it, cold and structural and total. You look toward the watchtowers in the distance. You tighten your hand around your rifle, and whatever rules you've been carrying for 3 years, whatever professional architecture basic training built inside you, it develops a crack right down the center. You can feel it happen. You can feel the exact moment it gives. The camp itself stretches further than you can take in at once. You move through the main gate and the scale of it hits you. Barracks that go on, fences, guard towers, and then the prisoners see you, and the sound that comes out of 30,000 human beings when they understand they are saved is unlike anything you've heard in your life or will hear again. They rush the fences. Skeletons in striped cloth, some of them barely able to stand, screaming, "Americans! Americans!" holding their hands through the wire, crying, laughing, some of them falling, some of them just standing and staring with expressions you don't have words for and never will. You're supposed to be controlling the perimeter. You're supposed to be professional. A woman presses her hands through the fence and grabs your jacket. She's so thin, her wrist looks like a branch. She's saying something in a language you don't speak, and she's looking at your face like you're the first real thing she's seen in years. You hold her hand through the fence. You don't know why. It's just what your body does. Behind you, other soldiers are moving through the camp. They found the crematorium. They found the ovens still full of ash. They found the records, the meticulous German records. Thousands of names in organized columns, bureaucratic and orderly and monstrous. You hear one of the men say, very quietly, to nobody in particular, "They kept files. They kept files on all of them." The SS guards are still in the camp. The commandant has fled, but he left behind about 500 men and a young lieutenant named Wicker, who has polished his boots and put on his best uniform and is walking out with a white flag like he expects a salute, like what's behind him is a minor administrative matter. An American officer looks at him. Clean uniform, well-fed face, polished boots. Then he looks at the cattle cars. He spits in the German's face. The surrender does not go the way Wicker planned. Near the coal yard, a group of SS guards have their hands up. They're shouting phrases they've clearly been coached to believe will save them. Hitler kaput. Hitler is finished. As if the problem was always Hitler and not the men who ran the ovens. As if finishing Hitler settles the account. Lieutenant Jack Bushyhead is watching them. He's a Native American officer from Oklahoma, not far from where you grew up. He's been in this war since North Africa. He's not a man who loses control. He's just come from the crematorium. He looks at the SS men standing there, healthy, upright, arms raised in calculated surrender. He looks at his men. He doesn't give a verbal order. He just looks at the machine gunner and gestures toward the wall. Line them up. The Germans seem to realize something has changed in the last second before it changes. They're lined up against the brick wall, 50 of them, and you can see the moment the calculation shifts in their faces. They start to panic. One of them shouts something about the Geneva Convention, the words coming out fast and desperate, as if law is a thing that survives what's in those cattle cars. The machine gunner sets up his weapon. His name is Birdeye, and you've known him since France, and he's one of the steadiest men you've ever served with. He's crying while he does it. The lieutenant nods. The sound is enormous and total, and then it's over. When the smoke clears, 50 SS guards are on the ground. The snow is black with coal dust and red underneath. Some of them aren't dead yet. Your hands are shaking, but not in the direction of stopping. Lieutenant Colonel Sparks comes running. He's heard it. He's got his pistol out, and he fires into the air, and he's screaming, "Stop it! Stop it! What the hell are you doing?" And the machine gunner looks at him with blank, wet eyes. "Colonel," he says, "they deserved it." Sparks looks at the wall. He looks at his men. He doesn't say anything else. The prisoners are out of the barracks. They're weak. Some of them can barely walk. But adrenaline does something to the human body that nutrition can't. And somehow they're moving. And somehow they've found an SS guard hiding in a watchtower, and they drag him down. They don't have guns. They have shovels, sticks, their bare hands, and 3 years of what he did to them. An officer asks, "Should we stop them?" A sergeant drags on his cigarette. "No," he says, "let them finish." The American soldiers stand at a distance and watch it happen, and nobody intervenes, and you'll spend the rest of your life working out how you feel about that, and never fully arriving at an answer. For 1 hour, Dachau is a lawless zone. The victims become everything, judge and jury and hands and outcome. The U.S. Army looks at the grass. Eventually, order comes back. Sparks locks up the surviving Germans, ironically, to protect them from the men he commands. The prisoners are contained, given water, given food in careful amounts because the doctors say too much too fast will kill them. The camp is secured. The paperwork begins. Photos have been taken. Photos of Americans standing over executed Germans. Photos of the coal yard. Photos that would sink careers if they surface in the wrong hands. A few days later, an investigation team arrives. Lieutenant Colonel Whitaker. They interview soldiers. They collect photos. They produce a report with a title that uses the word alleged and recommends court-martials. The report travels up the chain. It lands on the desk of General George S. Patton. Patton reads the report. He looks at the photos of the executed guards. He looks at the photos of the death train. Patton is the kind of man who has punished soldiers for unpolished boots, who believes in discipline the way other men believe in God. He reads the word alleged. He reads the word mistreatment. He puts the report down on his desk. War crimes? He says to the investigating officer. You walk into a place like that, you see what my boys saw, and you expect them to follow the rule book. He picks the report back up. Hell no. He calls the SS the slime of the earth. He says his men were overwrought. He says nervous trigger fingers happen in war. He doesn't sign the court-martial papers. He takes the report and, depending on who you ask, he burns it or he buries it so deep in classified archives that it might as well not exist. The SS got what they deserved, he says. Dismissed. Eisenhower agrees. He's seen the photographs of the cattle cars. He understands the arithmetic. You do not put American liberators on trial for killing Nazi guards in front of the American people. Not in 1945. Not ever. The charges disappear. Jack Bushyhead goes home to Oklahoma. He never speaks about the coal yard. He dies in 1977 with the whole of it behind his eyes where nobody can reach it. You go home eventually, not right away. There's processing and transport and an ocean, and then an American street that looks exactly the way you left it, which feels like an accusation. The world should have the decency to look different when you do. People ask how it was over there. You say fine. They nod and move on because they don't really want the answer, and you don't have words for it anyway. Not the real words. Not the words that would require them to understand what 30,000 skeletons looks like when they grab your jacket through a fence. Ruth is waiting. You marry her in the fall. You get the piece of land. You get the dog. But some nights, you still smell it. That specific wrongness underneath the diesel in the cold air. You still hear the machine gun. You still see Bird Eye's face, wet and blank and certain. You still feel the woman's hand through the fence wire, thin as a branch, holding on. And you still don't know, after all the years that pass, after the war ends and Germany rebuilds and the world moves forward in the way the world always does, you still don't know where the line is. Whether what happened at that coal yard was justice or something else wearing justice's face. Whether it matters, given what was in those cattle cars. Whether the rules of war are written by people who've never smelled what you smelled on that Sunday morning in April. You think about Wicker, his polished boots, his white flag, his absolute confidence that surrender was a transaction that would be honored. You think about Bird Eye, crying while he set up the machine gun. You think about the woman's hand, same morning, same camp, same gray sky. You carry all three of them, quietly, permanently, in the place behind the eyes where the things live that don't have names. The memorial at Dachau today honors the 30,000 victims, their names, their faces, the record of what was done to them in organized columns, meticulous and monstrous. There is no memorial for the 50 SS guards at the coal yard wall. History has ruled on them. But the question they leave behind doesn't go away with them. It just gets quieter as the years pass, and the men who were there get older, and then it gets quieter still. If you had walked past that train on April 29, 1945, if you had smelled what they smelled, seen what they saw, held a hand through that fence, would you have pulled the trigger? Be honest. Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see the story of the Ghost Army that fooled Hitler with inflatable tanks and fake radio signals, click the video on the screen. Thanks for watching.